Like, I'm a big believer in that artificial intelligence is not evil, that like it's going to be great and amazing and it's going to help us progress so much in humanity. And progression does not mean growth. Keep that in mind. Hi guys, I'm back. It's another day and we're going to have another sled as I react to Klara and the Sun. Hopefully this video doesn't end up backwards. Anyway, this book was recommended to me by my teacher, one of my teachers. She's a doctor, and she doesn't like to call herself a teacher, but whatever. She recommended this because I took class last year on artificial intelligence, and this book is written from the perspective of artificial intelligence. And let me tell you, it was so good. So, Klara and the Sun is about an artificial intelligence named Klara, but they don't call them that in the book. They're just called artificial friends. And just know that this book is in the genre of magical realism, and that means that little explanation is given about things that are just accepted as fact in this world, but don't make sense to us. Like, there's very little detail about what Klara looks like, but it's implied that she's a doll of some kind, and she's like a small version of people. And she goes and she becomes the artificial friend of this girl, Josie, who is her like destined teenager or whatever. And she is dedicated to be her artificial friend as she grows up in solitude in this world because apparently schools don't exist anymore. Everyone is taught online in their homes by themselves. And because of that, there's this really weird thing where they have to have interaction meetings where like all teenagers have to get together and learn to socialize. And like it's so cringy. It explored what it means to love. Like, let me read you the summary. In Klara and the Sun, Kazuo Ishiguro looks at a rapidly changing modern world through the eyes of an unforgettable narrator to explore a fundamental question. What does it mean to love? And there's a very powerful quote in the book, which is like printed on the back of this page. Do you believe in the human heart? I don't mean simply the organ, obviously. I'm speaking in the poetic sense, the human heart. Do you think there's such a thing? Something that makes each of us special and individual? And that question is never clearly answered. Boy, it's good. Although Klara does make, okay, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling this for y'all, but that's just how I roll. Another quote I love is what others have in their hearts for you. You know, I'm not going to go into depth about this spoiler, but basically, the mother of Josie, who is literally called the mother from Klara's perspective, she weirdly encourages Klara to observe everything about Josie, and there's a reason for that. Yeah. The Klara and the Sun is a very positive portrayal of AI, but even then, it's not completely positive. It's realistic. It's complex. And it's a complex portrayal of humans, too, because immediately it's implied that Klara is a toy, but a very cool and advanced toy. And she's like a toy slash therapist in a sense. And she just has to be there. But she's looked down upon by everyone else besides her human friend. And by the as an artificial friend, she is meant for a teenager. And once that teenager grows up, there's no longer need for her by the person or the family in which the artificial friend lives. So And that was one of the most beautiful things about this book is that Klara it started in a store as an item to be sold, and she ended up in a scrapyard. But yet there wasn't any negative connotation about that situation. It was just simply the way things were. And I thought, in the context of it being an artificial intelligence narrator, that's very interesting because it's not human, so it wouldn't have negative feelings about those things. This is one of the things I loved most about the book. Because it's from the perspective of an AI, Klara keeps categorizing things in boxes. And that I know that sounds very confusing, but think about how like street cameras, they like identify something and then there's like a box around it with a label identifying the thing. It's kind of like that, but in a more like advanced and abstract way. And it was more attached to emotions. Like Klara would identify groups of human behaving a certain way, and then they would all fit into a box or hundreds of boxes depending on what their emotion was and how extreme and loud their emotion was in that sense. Like she talks about how whenever she was talking to the mother would be taking up eight boxes, or her face would simply fill a whole orange box. And like it wasn't elaborated very much, but it was mentioned that she saw things not purely in boxes, but every now and then boxes would show up. And it especially shows up whenever she interacts with the sun. And like, the sun as faith and hope, the philosophy Klara has, and the religion and superstition she kind of follows from the title, Klara and the Sun. Because the only thing we give about her technology is that she's solar powered. So she has a relationship with the sun because the sun gets her energy, and she has a superstitious relationship of the sun he, and she always talks to the sun and eventually asks the sun for a huge favor because the sun is God basically. And that was really interesting to me too, is what their spiritual superstitions would be if they were to have some. Also, the theme of temporary mindsets of people and how they seemingly change. Basically, Clara's an AI, so she remembers everything basically. So she observes how people make these promises to each other and to her, and then they don't necessarily break the promises, they just fade away as the world changes and priority changes. And that's such a simplified yet complex observation of the human experience and how we are such victims of circumstance. And that's observed in a way that only a non changing perspective could. And I really like that. And there's lots of allusions to capitalism failing human priority as economy is increasingly run by the machines. The machines. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. There's not much else to say about that. And just like it's kind of I've never read a book that I don't think ever had a non-human narrator where there are humans involved. Like I've read books where like it's all animals and like the animals can talk and whatever, and it's from the perspective of animals. But this is from the perspective of a non-human but yet human equivalent intelligent being. Does that make sense? Like it's an AI. She was like, that's interesting. That's the whole thing with an artificial friend. Like the artificial friend doesn't know anything beforehand. They have to learn everything. Like it's machine learning. It's a very good symbolic representation of what artificial intelligence is. So whenever Klara encountered these complex human behaviors that she hadn't before, she she'd be like, that's interesting. I'll categorize it for later. And then she grows and complexifies and develops beauty. And I really appreciate that. And I've never read a book from perspective of AI. And with all the negative portrayal of AI in the media, especially with Chat GPT-3 and Dolly and Midjourney and whatever that one photo generator is that got TikTok all riled up. Like, it's not the whole picture. AI is great. Okay? And like, first of all, also I hate that term artificial intelligence. Like, artificial intelligence is not what current AI is. Like, it's a machine. It's math and logistics and numbers. Like, even Dolly was just like, ooh, beautiful abstract pictures. Like, it's literally just doing it's creating a mathematical image pixel by pixel. And like, there's plenty of YouTube videos where you can look up how that is done. And like, we know how it's done. We know exactly how it's like. It's not conscious or aware, or it has no opinion about what it's doing. It's just simply doing what it's doing. It is what it is, okay? It's magical realism, y'all. Like, if you haven't read that 100 Years of Solitude and never watched magical realism is such an underappreciated genre. I can't even. Anyway, Klara and the Sun is really good. Let me make sure there's nothing else I need to mention. Anyway, so I totally recommend reading Klara and the Sun by this man. He's Canadian Japanese. He immigrated from Japan. Oh no, not Canadian. British Japanese, whatever. And he's written a lot of good books, but this one really stands out. And it's such a simple cover too. Like, I never would have like picked this off the shelf unless it was no. And like, it was recommended to me by my teacher, and like, I recommended one of my books to her. So if she doesn't read that, I'm gonna come for her. And it was in like the old fiction section. Like, it wasn't in the young adult section, and it wasn't in the yeah, it just wasn't in the young adult section. It was in like the old fiction section with like all the Stephen, what do you call those? Those thriller novels. I'm sorry guys, I'm an assistant librarian. I should know these things, but another day, another slide.